The first thing my sister said when she got back from Las Vegas was, "Why won't my key work?" She was standing on the front porch of the house our mother called the one thing this family would never lose, dragging a glittery silver suitcase behind her. Her sunburn was still fresh across her shoulders. Her phone was in her hand. The same phone she had used to post champagne glasses, rooftop pools, and a caption that said times. Sometimes you have to choose yourself. Then she saw the brass plate beside the front door. Reed Property. Private Residence. My name was on it. I was 31 years old, 7 months pregnant, and working as an escrow coordinator in Mesa, Arizona. I knew how people lied with paperwork. I knew how they hid behind signatures, vague promises, and the word, times, family. But until that week, I had never understood how quickly someone could steal from you while smiling directly into your face. My sister Brielle had always been good at making people think she deserved more than everyone else. She was 28, beautiful in the polished, effortless way that made strangers forgive her before she had even done anything wrong. Our mother used to call her the light in the room. My father used to say Brielle had a sensitive heart. I was the practical one. The one who remembered due dates. The one who picked up prescriptions. The one who drove Mom to appointments after Dad's back injury made it harder for him to get around. The one who filled out forms, called banks, checked insurance, and quietly handled whatever emergency appeared after Brielle had already disappeared. When I got pregnant, I thought maybe things would change. Not because I expected Brielle to become a different person overnight. I wasn't that naive. But I thought a baby might soften something in her. I thought becoming an aunt might make her see me as more than the sister who could be guilted into fixing things. Instead, she saw a new opportunity. The baby shower fund started as a small envelope Mom kept in her kitchen drawer. She had written Times Baby, Read Times across the front in pink marker and tucked it under a stack of coupons. At first it was sweet. My parents were not wealthy, but Mom wanted to help. She said, every little bit mattered when you were preparing for a child. My friends added money. My coworkers passed around a card and collected cash. My aunt sent a check with a note that said she wished she could be there. Even my father, who had been struggling to stand for long periods, slipped $200 into the envelope one night and told me not to argue with him. "It's for the crib," he said. I cried after he went to bed. Not because of the money. Because he looked embarrassed that it wasn't more. By the time the shower was 2 weeks away, there was almost $4,000 in that envelope. It was not a fortune. It was not enough to change anyone's life. But it was enough for a safe car seat, a crib that didn't wobble, a stroller that could survive Arizona sidewalks, and maybe a little breathing room after the baby came. It was enough because it came from people who loved me. That was what Brielle took. The day I found out, I had gone to my parents' house after work because Mom texted me 3 words. "Come over, please." I knew something was wrong before I even stepped inside. The living room was too quiet. My father was sitting in his recliner with both hands folded over his stomach, staring at the blank television screen. Mom was at the kitchen table holding the empty pink envelope like it had personally betrayed her. Brielle was leaning against the counter in a white linen jumpsuit, scrolling through her phone. I remember looking at the envelope first. Then at her. Then back at the envelope. "Where is it?" I asked. Mom's mouth tightened. Brielle said she borrowed it. I looked at my sister. Borrowed what? She finally lifted her eyes. "Don't do this." "Borrowed what?" I asked again. She sighed like I had made the entire situation inconvenient for her. "The money. I needed it." My hands went cold. "You took my baby shower fund." I said, "I'm paying it back." "With what?" "That is none of your business." I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "It's literally my money." "No," Brielle said sharply. "It was sitting in Mom's kitchen drawer. It wasn't in your account. It wasn't protected. And honestly, Naomi, you already have a job. You have Caleb. You have people helping you." I was drowning. Caleb was my husband. He was a middle school math teacher, steady and kind, and currently working an extra summer program because we were trying to prepare for the baby without asking anyone for help. Brielle knew that. She also knew we had postponed replacing our old car because we were trying to save for a safer one before the baby arrived. Still, she looked at me as if I had stolen something from her. "What did you spend it on?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. That was how I knew. "Mom," whispered Brielle. My sister's eyes flashed toward her. I needed to get away for a few days. My father slowly turned his head. You went to Vegas. It was already planned, Brielle snapped. And I couldn't cancel everything. People had booked rooms. I had commitments. I stared at her. You used my baby's money to go to Las Vegas. You are making it sound worse than it is. What would make it sound better? She crossed her arms. I've been having a hard time too, Naomi. There it was. The sentence that had protected Brielle her entire life. I've been having a hard time too. She used it after missing Mom's birthday dinner. She used it after Dad asked her to contribute to groceries. She used it after she quit 3 jobs in 1 year because every manager was toxic. She used it after borrowing money from me for rent and using it on concert tickets. And every time someone told me to be understanding. Every time I was the one expected to be bigger. Mom started crying quietly at the table. She said she would put it back after the trip. I will, Brielle said quickly. I'll pay it back. I just need time. You leave tomorrow, I said. She looked away. That was when I realized she had already packed. The glittery suitcase was sitting by the hallway wall. Her passport case was tucked into the side pocket. She had planned the trip while pretending she was only borrowing money for something urgent. I felt the baby move then, low and sharp beneath my ribs. It was a small kick. But it grounded me. I put one hand over my stomach and looked at Brielle for a long moment. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask how she could look at me every week, ask about baby names, touch my stomach, and then use that money to buy poolside drinks and hotel upgrades. Instead, I said, "Give me your bank app." She blinked. What? Open it. No. Open it, Brielle. My voice was calm enough that everyone stopped moving. She gave a short laugh. You think you can order me around now? No, I said. I think you should show Mom where the money went. My father sat forward in his chair. Brielle, do it. For a second, her face changed. Not into guilt. Not really. Into annoyance. Like we had all failed to play our roles correctly. She unlocked her phone, opened her account, and shoved it toward me. I did not take it. I just looked. The balance was under $100. The transaction history showed airline tickets, hotel charges, a nightclub reservation, and a transfer to a woman named Kenzie with a purple heart beside her name. $4,000 was gone. Not borrowed. Gone. Mom made a sound I had never heard from her before. It was not quite a sob. It was more like something inside her had cracked without permission. Brielle saw it too. For 1 second I thought she might apologize. Instead she said, "Mom, don't act like I did this to hurt Naomi. I just needed one thing for myself." I looked at the pink envelope in Mom's hand. Then I looked at the silver suitcase. And something inside me became very still. I said, "Go on your trip." Brielle narrowed her eyes. What? Go. Mom looked at me in shock. Naomi. No, I said gently. Let her go. Brielle studied my face, probably waiting for tears, waiting for me to beg, waiting for me to make it easier for her to feel like the victim. When I didn't, she smiled. It was a small smile. Almost relieved. You'll understand me someday, she said. I looked down at my wedding ring, then at the faint line of dust on the kitchen floor where Mom's old front door had been dragging for years. No, I said, I really won't. Brielle left the next morning before sunrise. She did not say goodbye to me. She did not leave an apology. She did not send the money back. By noon she was posting pictures from the airport. By evening she was in a hotel suite with 3 friends holding a glass of something pink beneath a neon sign. And beneath one of the photos she wrote Times New Chapter, No More Guilt. My aunt called me that night, furious. My coworkers offered to restart the shower fund. Caleb sat beside me on the couch and said we would figure it out. Everyone wanted to solve the problem quickly because watching me sit with it made them uncomfortable. But I did not want a replacement fund. I wanted the truth to matter. 2 days after Brielle left, I drove to my parents' house with a folder on the passenger seat. Inside it were copies of every payment I had made over the last 4 years. The mortgage arrears after Dad's injury. The property tax bill Mom had hidden in a cookbook. The roof repair Brielle had promised to help with but never did. The bank transfer I made when the house was 10 days from foreclosure. My parents had never asked me to save the house outright. They had only asked for help until things got better. But I worked in escrow. I understood deadlines. I understood liens. I understood what happened when families confused love with verbal promises. So, when I paid the final amount needed to stop the foreclosure, I had made one condition. The house would be transferred into my name. Not because I wanted to take it from them. Because I wanted to protect it from being taken from all of us. Mom had signed the paperwork with shaking hands. Dad had signed after staring at the documents for nearly an hour. They had both told me they trusted me. Brielle had never known. Not because it was a secret. Because she had never bothered to ask. That afternoon I found Mom standing in the front hallway staring at the old front door. "Are you really going to do it?" she asked quietly. I looked at the chipped paint near the handle. I remembered being 14 years old standing there with a backpack, while Brielle cried in the kitchen because Mom had asked her to wash dishes. I remembered being 22 driving home from work to help Dad fill out disability forms while Brielle posted pictures from a music festival. I remembered every time I had been told to keep the peace. "Yes," I said. Mom covered her mouth. "I'm not throwing you and Dad out," I told her. "This is your home. But Brielle does not get to use this house like a hotel after she used my child's money like a vacation budget." Mom looked at me with wet eyes. "She'll say, 'We chose you.'" "No," I said. "She'll say that because she thinks every boundary is an attack." Then I opened the folder. The new lock had already been ordered. The locksmith came the next morning at 9. His name was Miguel, and he had the calm, neutral expression of a man who had changed locks after breakups, evictions, divorces, deaths, and family fights that had nothing to do with him. He did not ask why my mother stood behind the screen door crying quietly. He did not ask why my father watched from his recliner with his jaw clenched. He only asked me which doors I wanted rekeyed. "All of them," I said. "The front door, the garage, the side entrance near the laundry room, the back patio door that Brielle liked to use because she never carried a house key when she could assume someone would open the door for her." Miguel worked carefully. Each old lock came off with a soft metallic scrape. Each new lock clicked into place with a sound so final it made my chest tighten. I had expected to feel powerful. Instead, I felt sick. I was changing the locks on the house where I had learned to ride a bike, where Dad still kept my old height marks on the pantry wall, where Mom had cooked every Thanksgiving dinner I could remember. But then I thought about the pink envelope. I thought about Brielle using the word times, borrowed times after booking a hotel suite with my baby's money. And I kept going. Caleb arrived around noon, carrying sandwiches and the paper bag from a hardware store. He had bought 2 small security cameras for the front porch and driveway. Not because I was trying to trap anyone, not because I wanted to turn my parents' home into a fortress, but because I had finally accepted something I had spent years avoiding. Brielle did not respect verbal boundaries. She only respected consequences. When Caleb finished helping Miguel install the cameras, he stood beside me near the front window and watched the driveway for a long moment. "Are you okay?" he asked. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say I was fine, that this was just paperwork, just locks, just a practical correction to an ugly situation. But I was tired of making pain sound manageable so other people would not have to sit with it. "No," I said. "But I think I'm done pretending. That means I should stop." He nodded slowly. That was one of the things I loved about Caleb. He did not rush to fix my feelings. He did not tell me my sister probably had reasons. He did not remind me that family was complicated, as if complicated meant I should keep handing someone the knife. He just reached for my hand. "You're protecting our daughter," he said. The words settled inside me differently than anything else had. Not revenge. Protection. That afternoon my mother finally told me the full truth about how Brielle got the money. It had not been one impulsive decision. It had been planned in pieces. Brielle had started asking Mom about the shower fund 3 weeks earlier. She said she wanted to help organize the decorations. She asked where the cash was kept, how much had come in, who had contributed. Mom thought she was taking an interest. Then, 2 days before the trip, Brielle told her she needed to move the money somewhere safer because the kitchen drawer was too easy to access. Mom gave her the envelope without questioning it. "She said she was going to deposit it for you," Mom whispered. I sat across from her at the kitchen table, looking at the same drawer where the envelope had been kept. "And you believed her?" Mom flinched. The answer hurt because it was simple. Yes, she said. I could have said 100 cruel things in that moment. I could have reminded her that Brielle had lied before. I could have asked why she always believed Brielle's panic, but treated my concerns like criticism. I could have told her that she had made it easier for my sister to become this way. Instead, I looked at her hands. They were shaking. I know you didn't mean to hurt me, I said, but you have to stop treating her choices like accidents. Mom cried harder then. My father heard us from the living room. He pushed himself up slowly, walked into the kitchen, and leaned one hand against the counter. His face looked older than it had a week earlier. I should have stopped this years ago, he said. Neither Mom nor I answered. Dad looked down at the new keyring on the table. Every time she did something wrong, I told myself she'd grow out of it. Then I told myself she was just lost. Then I told myself she was younger than you and needed more grace. He swallowed. And all that grace came out of your pocket. That was the first honest thing he had said about Brielle in a long time. Brielle called that night from Las Vegas. Her name lit up my phone while Caleb and I were sitting on the couch half watching a cooking show neither of us cared about. I let it ring twice before answering. I put it on speaker because I was tired of being alone inside conversations that affected everyone. What? I said. There was a pause. Then Brielle laughed lightly. Wow. Okay. Someone's dramatic. What do you want? I talked to Mom. She said you changed the locks. I changed the locks. On Mom and Dad's house. On the house in my name. Her silence was short, but I heard it. Then she said, that is honestly insane. I looked across the room at Caleb. He did not say anything. Brielle kept going. You cannot just punish everyone because you're mad at me. I'm not punishing everyone. You're punishing me. Yes. She made a sound of disbelief. Naomi, I said, I'm paying you back. When? I don't know. When I can. You had money for a flight, a hotel, dinners, clubs, and whatever else you posted online. That trip was already happening. You made it happen with my baby's money. You keep saying that like I robbed you? You did. Her voice turned sharp. I am your sister. That is why it hurts. For a few seconds, neither of us said anything. I could hear music in the background. Laughter. Someone shouting near her. It sounded like she was standing in a hotel hallway far away from every consequence waiting for her at home. Then she lowered her voice. You know what your problem is. You always need to be the better person. You always need everyone to see you as the responsible one. Maybe you like this. Maybe you like having a reason to look down on me. I stared at the dark television screen. That accusation landed because some part of me had heard versions of it my entire life. Whenever I set a boundary, I was controlling. Whenever I refused to lend money, I was cold. Whenever I pointed out the truth, I was judgmental. Brielle had built her power by making accountability feel cruel. I took a breath. You are confusing being confronted with being looked down on, I said. They are not the same thing. She went quiet again. Then she said, fine. Keep the locks. I'll deal with Mom when I get home. You can talk to Mom and Dad. You cannot stay there. You don't get to decide that. I already did. She hung up. For the next 2 days, Brielle tried every version of pressure she knew. She called Mom crying. She texted Dad saying I was turning them against her. She messaged me photos of herself at a brunch table with the caption times, "You know I love you, right?" times. Then 3 hours later she sent another message accusing me of humiliating her in front of the family. I did not answer. That silence made her angrier than anything I could have said. My aunt called to tell me Brielle had told relatives I was trying to steal the house from our parents. I thanked her for telling me, then asked her one question. Did Brielle mention the $4,000? There was a long pause. No, my aunt said. Then she isn't telling you the story. She's selling you a version where she has no responsibility. By the end of the call, my aunt was quiet. Not convinced, maybe, but quieter. That was all I needed. I had spent too many years trying to make everyone understand me perfectly. I was beginning to learn that truth did not always need a public relations campaign. Sometimes it just needed documents, dates, and the courage not to explain yourself into exhaustion. The deed was recorded the following morning. I had known it would happen. I had signed the papers months earlier after I brought the mortgage current and covered the property taxes. But seeing the official record made something in me settle. The county website listed the property under my legal name. It showed the transfer date. It showed the recording number. It showed exactly what I had paid to save the house. No secret trust. No hidden inheritance. No trick. Just the consequences of the help I had given when everyone else had stepped away. I printed 3 copies. One for my folder. One for the small fireproof box Caleb kept in our closet. One for the kitchen drawer, where Mom had once kept the pink envelope. When Mom saw me place it there, she looked confused. "Why there?" she asked. "Because that drawer is where we kept pretending things would be safe just because we wanted them to be." She closed her eyes. The day before Brielle was scheduled to fly home, Caleb and I went shopping for baby supplies. We bought a crib mattress, a car seat, and a stroller that folded with one hand. It was not the stroller I had originally picked out. We had to choose a cheaper model. We had to put some of it on a credit card we planned to pay down over the next few months. But when Caleb assembled the crib in the corner of our room, I stood there with both hands resting on the rail and felt something I had not felt since Brielle took the money. Relief. Not because the loss had disappeared. Because I had stopped waiting for the person who caused it to make it right. That night Mom called me around 11. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Brielle changed her flight," she said. "To when?" "She lands tomorrow morning." I sat up in bed. Mom continued. "She said she'll come straight here." I looked toward the window. The street outside was quiet. A porch light across the road flickered once, then went still. "Okay," I said. "She sounds angry." "I know. She says she has nowhere else to go." I thought about Brielle's friends, her coworkers, the boyfriend she had mentioned last month and never mentioned again. I thought about the hotel pictures, the expensive drinks, the captions about freedom and choosing herself. Then I thought about my daughter still moving quietly beneath my ribs. "She has somewhere else to go," I said. "She just doesn't want it to be somewhere she has to pay for." Mom started to cry again. This time I did not rush to soothe her. "I love you," I said. "But tomorrow you and Dad need to decide whether you want peace or whether you want Brielle's approval. You cannot have both." The next morning I drove to my parents' house before sunrise. The new brass lock shone against the dark blue front door. The small camera above the porch blinked once as I stepped inside. Dad was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with coffee he had not touched. Mom stood near the window, twisting her hands together. I placed the deed copy on the table between them. Then I placed the new house rules beside it. No overnight stays for Brielle. No access without permission. No money borrowed from anyone in this house. No conversations about family loyalty unless the word times, responsibility times came first. Dad read every line. Mom cried through the first half. Then slowly she picked up a pen. Outside, the sky began to brighten. And somewhere above Arizona, my sister's plane was already descending. Brielle's flight landed at 8:17 that morning. I knew because she texted Mom from the airport, not me. She wrote times, "Tell Naomi I'm coming home whether she likes it or not." Then 3 minutes later she sent another message saying, "Times, this is exactly why families fall apart. Because people get power and forget where they came from." Mom read both messages aloud at the kitchen table, her voice trembling around every word. Dad said nothing. He was wearing the gray work shirt he used to wear when he needed to fix something around the house. The shirt had paint marks on one sleeve and a small tear near the elbow. He had not done any repair work in months. Still, he wore it like armor. At 9:02, a rideshare pulled into the driveway. Brielle stepped out first. She had traded her vacation clothes for a soft beige travel set and oversized sunglasses. Her silver suitcase rolled behind her. A second suitcase followed. Then a black carry-on, then 2 shopping bags from stores I knew were not cheap. She did not look like someone who had run out of money. She looked like someone who expected a door to open. She reached the porch, glanced up at the camera and frowned. Then she tried her old key. Once, twice, a third time harder. Nothing. She leaned closer to the lock like it had personally insulted her. Then she looked through the glass and saw me standing in the hallway. Her face changed immediately. Not regret. Not shame. Anger. She pulled off her sunglasses. Opened the door. I stayed where I was. Good morning, Brielle. Don't do that fake calm thing with me. Open the door. Dad came into the hallway behind me. His steps were slow, but his voice was steady when he spoke. You need to lower your voice. Brielle stared at him. Dad, tell her to stop this. No, he said. The word hung in the air. Brielle blinked as if she had misheard him. What do you mean, no? I mean you don't get to come here angry and demand things after what you did. Her mouth opened slightly. She looked from Dad to Mom, then back to me. So this is all coordinated? No, Mom said from behind us. Her voice was weak, but she stepped closer. This is what happens when we stop making excuses. Brielle laughed, but the sound was thin. Are you serious right now? I came home and you're all standing there acting like I committed some kind of crime. You took money that was meant for my child, I said. I borrowed it. You spent it. I said I'll pay it back. With what, Dad asked. Brielle turned toward him offended. Why are you talking to me like that? Because I should have years ago. For a second, no one moved. Cars passed on the street. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked behind a fence. The normal world kept going while my sister stood outside the house she had always treated like an extension of herself. Then she lifted her chin. Fine, she said. I'll stay in my old room until everyone calms down. That room is not available to you, I said. Her eyes narrowed. Excuse me. You can visit Mom and Dad when they invite you. You can come for dinner when they are comfortable with it. But you are not moving in. She stared at me. This is not your house. I looked at the brass lock, then at the small camera above her head, then back at her face. Yes, I said. It is. Brielle looked toward Mom as if she expected her to correct me. Mom did not. Dad opened the front door just enough to slide the printed occupancy agreement through the gap. Brielle grabbed it from his hand before he could explain. Her eyes moved down the page. The agreement was simple. My parents had the right to live in the house for as long as they needed it. They did not pay rent, they were protected, but they could not allow another adult to move in without my written permission. Dad had signed it 2 years earlier when I took over the mortgage. Mom had signed it beside him. Brielle's fingers tightened around the paper. You made them sign this, she said. No, I answered. They signed it after the bank told us the house could be sold. You trapped them. I saved the house. You made it yours. I made sure it could not be lost. She shook her head slowly, as if I were the one exposing something ugly. You always do this. You make everything sound reasonable. Because it is reasonable. No. Her voice rose. Because you hide behind paperwork and act like that makes you better than everyone else. I felt the old instinct rise in me. The one that wanted to soften my tone. The one that wanted to explain I was not trying to be better. The one that wanted to prove I was still kind enough to deserve her approval. Then the baby moved beneath my ribs. I placed my hand over my stomach. I'm not better than you, I said. I am just no longer willing to pay for your choices. The words hit harder than I expected. Brielle's face went still. For a moment I saw something close to panic behind her anger. Not because she understood what she had done, because she understood the system had changed. The door was no longer opening just because she arrived. She looked down at her suitcases. Where am I supposed to go? That is something you should have planned before you spent money that wasn't yours. You want me homeless? No, I want you responsible. She scoffed. There is no difference. There is, Dad said. You just never wanted to learn it. Brielle's eyes filled, but I knew her well enough to see what kind of tears they were. They were not grief. They were strategy. She had used them on teachers, boyfriends, friends, and family members whenever a consequence became inconvenient. She looked at Mom. You're really letting her do this? Mom pressed both hands together. You took Naomi's money. I said I was sorry. No, I said quietly. You said you needed one thing for yourself. Brielle's mouth tightened. That isn't an apology, I continued. That is an explanation for why you thought you were allowed to hurt someone. She looked like she wanted to throw the suitcase at the door. Instead, she picked up her phone. You know what she said? People are going to hear about this. Okay, I said. Her expression shifted. She had expected fear. You think your little deed protects you, she asked. You're kicking your own sister out while you're pregnant. You're putting your parents in the middle. You're taking the only home we have. You mean the home I kept from foreclosure, I said. She smiled bitterly. There it is. You love saying that. No, I told her. I hate that it had to happen. Brielle called my aunt from the porch. She did not move away. She wanted us to hear. She wanted her version of the story to become real through repetition. Aunt Denise, she said loudly. I'm outside Mom and Dad's house. Naomi changed the locks and told me I can't come in. She paused, listening. No, I don't know what's gotten into her. She keeps saying, I stole money, but I told her I would repay it. She's using this house thing to punish me. Dad looked down at the floor. Mom looked like she might collapse. I watched Brielle's face as she spoke. Her voice was shaking now, carefully shaking, the kind of trembling that made people rush to comfort her before asking the obvious question. Then I walked to the dining room and returned with the clear plastic folder I had prepared the night before. I did not interrupt her call. I waited until she said I just need someone to make her see reason. Then I held the folder up against the glass. Brielle noticed it. Her voice stopped. Inside were printed screenshots of her Las Vegas posts, each one marked with the date and time. Beside them were copies of Mom's handwritten fund, tally my aunt's check, the card from my coworkers, and the receipt from the baby store where Caleb and I had put the new car seat on a credit card. At the bottom was one screenshot Brielle had forgotten about. A text she sent Mom the afternoon before she left. Can you send me a picture of the shower money total? I want to make sure I deposit every dollar correctly. Mom had saved it. Brielle stared through the glass at that message for a long time. Then she lowered the phone from her ear. What is that? She asked. The story you keep leaving out, I said. Her eyes flicked to the front camera. Then back to me. I could almost see the calculation happening. The video had sound. The timestamps would show she arrived angry, not frightened. The folder showed she had planned the theft. The deed showed the house was not being stolen from our parents. The occupancy agreement showed they were protected. Her story had sounded powerful when it was only her voice. It looked different beside evidence. You wouldn't, she said. I already did. Her mouth dropped open slightly. I sent copies to Aunt Denise this morning, I told her. And to everyone who asked what happened. Mom gasped softly behind me. Brielle's face turned pale. You sent our private business to people. You made it public when you started telling people I was stealing this house. You're trying to embarrass me. No, I said. I'm refusing to carry your lie. That was when Brielle finally lost control. She slammed her suitcase upright and stepped close to the door. You think you're so smart because you work with contracts all day. You think you can build a life out of documents and locks and make everyone forget who you really are. I did not move. And who am I? I asked. Her face twisted. The sister who always needed to be needed, she snapped. The one who had to act like the martyr because no one would choose her otherwise. The hallway went silent. It was a cruel thing to say. And because it was cruel, it reached for the deepest wound. For years I had wondered if she was right. I had wondered whether I helped too much because I needed a place in the family. I had wondered whether all my patience was really just fear of being called selfish. But standing there behind the locked door, I understood something I had not understood before. Helping people did not make me weak. Letting them use me did. I looked at Brielle and felt no need to defend myself. You're right about one thing, I said. I used to believe I had to earn my place here. She blinked. But I don't anymore. The rideshare she had arrived in was gone. Her phone was down to 6% battery. She had nowhere to put the suitcases except the porch. For the first time in her life, the family home was not a safety net she could pull over herself without thinking. Mom took one step toward the door. I thought she was going to unlock it. Instead, she said, Brielle, call Kenzie. Or call one of the friends you traveled with. You have options. Brielle looked at her as though Mom had betrayed her. Then she picked up her suitcase handle. You'll regret this, she said. I held her gaze. No, I said. I'll regret how long I waited. She walked down the driveway without saying goodbye. At the curb, she turned once and looked back at the house. The front door was the same blue it had always been. The porch light was still on. Dad's old wind chime still moved softly in the dry morning air. But the house no longer belonged to the version of our family that let Betrayal take whatever she wanted. That afternoon, a certified letter arrived. It was addressed to me. The return address belonged to an attorney in Scottsdale. And inside was a demand that I cease and desist from making defamatory statements about my sister, return her personal belongings, and allow her immediate access to the family home. At the bottom of the letter was a sentence that made my stomach drop. Betrayal was claiming that Dad had promised her half the house before I manipulated him into signing the deed. Dad read it twice. Then he went to the hallway closet, reached behind a stack of old board games, and pulled out a sealed manila envelope. "I should have given you this a long time ago," he said. On the front in his handwriting were 5 words. "For when Betrayal denies everything." Dad carried the envelope to the kitchen table like it weighed more than paper should. The seal had yellowed at the edges. His handwriting looked uneven, as if he had written it late at night with one hand pressed against his back. Mom sat beside him without speaking. I stayed standing for a moment, afraid that whatever was inside would either save us or make everything worse. Then Dad looked at me and nodded. "Open it," he said. Inside were copies of emails, a signed statement, and a small black flash drive taped to the back of a folded sheet of paper. The first email was from Dad to Betrayal, sent nearly 2 years earlier. The subject line read, "Times, House, Situation." He had explained that the mortgage was behind, the foreclosure date was approaching, and I had agreed to cover the arrears only if ownership transferred into my name to protect the property. Dad had written times, "Naomi is not taking this house from us. She is keeping us from losing it." Betrayal's reply was printed beneath it. "Fine. Put it in Naomi's name. I don't care about that old dump, just don't expect me to pay for Dad's mistakes." I read it twice. Then I read it again. Mom closed her eyes. Dad's mouth tightened. For years he had carried that response alone, probably because he was ashamed that he had allowed it to become normal. Betrayal had not been tricked. She had not been excluded. She had known exactly what was happening. She just had not cared until the house became useful to her again. The second document was a statement Dad had written 6 months after the deed transfer. It was signed in front of a notary. In it, he explained that he and Mom had voluntarily agreed to the title transfer after I paid the mortgage arrears, the taxes, and the roof repair. He stated that neither he nor Mom had promised Betrayal ownership, partial ownership, or the right to live there. At the bottom, Dad had added one final sentence in his own handwriting. "My daughter Naomi has spent too much of her life carrying things that should have been mine to carry." I looked up at him. His eyes were wet. "I wrote that after she asked me for money again," he said. "You were working 2 jobs at the time. You were barely sleeping, and I still let Betrayal call you selfish because you said no." The room became very quiet. I had spent so long waiting for someone to say it plainly that when Dad finally did, I did not know what to do with the relief. It did not erase anything. It did not give back the shower fund or the years or the nights I had stayed awake wondering why being dependable had made me everyone's backup plan. But it mattered. Because truth matters even when it arrives late. The flash drive contained 3 audio recordings. Dad had made them after Betrayal started calling him in the middle of the night asking for money, and then denying it later. He had not set out to build a case against his daughter. He had only wanted to remember what was real. The first recording was Betrayal asking him to co-sign for an apartment. The second was Betrayal crying, because she had maxed out a credit card. The third was the one that changed everything. In it, Dad told her that the house was legally mine. Betrayal's voice came through the speakers, sharp and impatient. "Then let Naomi have it. She's obsessed with being the homeowner anyway. I'm not living in that place. It smells like old carpet and disappointment." Dad had been quiet for several seconds. Then he asked, "So you understand you are not entitled to it?" Betrayal laughed. "Of course I understand. I just know Naomi will hand it over eventually because that's what she does." The recording ended there. Mom covered her mouth with both hands. I did not cry. Not because it did not hurt. Because suddenly, for the first time, it did not confuse me. Betrayal had never believed I would stop. That had been her real plan. Not the Vegas trip, not the fake apology, not the attorney's letter. She believed that eventually I would get tired of being called cruel and go back to being useful. She had mistaken my patience for permission. The attorney's letter gave us 10 days to respond. I did not panic. I did not call Brielle. I did not beg her to drop it before things got worse. I did what I had learned to do in escrow when someone tried to turn a feeling into a claim. I built a timeline. I printed the foreclosure notices, the bank transfers, the deed, the notarized occupancy agreement, the emails, the saved text messages, and the screenshots from Las Vegas. I organized everything by date. I highlighted nothing dramatic. I used no angry words. I did not need them. Facts were enough. Caleb sat across from me at our dining table while I worked. The baby's crib stood in the corner of the room, half assembled, waiting quietly for a life that had not begun yet. He watched me sort papers into labeled folders. "You don't have to prove you're a good person," he said softly. "I know. You just have to protect yourself." I looked at him. Then I slid the last document into place. "That's what I'm doing." The attorney in Scottsdale called 2 days later. His name was Paul Mercer. His voice was professional, measured, almost tired. He said he had received my response packet and wanted to clarify several things before moving forward. I could hear papers shifting on his desk. "Miss Reed," he said, "were you aware your sister claimed your father verbally promised her half the property?" "Yes." "And your father denies that?" "Yes." "And you have a notarized statement from him dated before this dispute?" "Yes." There was another pause. Then he asked, "You also have an email exchange in which your sister acknowledges the title transfer?" "Yes." "And an audio recording in which she states she has no ownership claim?" "Yes." His exhale was quiet. "I see." I did not gloat. I did not raise my voice. I only said I would like your client to stop contacting my parents about this property. She has been pressuring them. He told me he would speak with Brielle. That evening he sent a written notice withdrawing the demand. It was only 1 page. No apology. No admission. Just a statement that his office would not pursue the matter further. But I did not need an apology from a lawyer. I needed Brielle to understand that she could not rewrite history just because the truth no longer benefited her. 3 days later she came back. This time she did not arrive with suitcases. She arrived alone. Mom had called me first. She told me Brielle was parked down the street and asking if she could come inside. I thought about saying no. I almost did, but Dad was sitting at the kitchen table with the folder in front of him, and something in his face told me he needed this moment too. So I agreed to one conversation. No yelling. No overnight stay. No changing the subject. Brielle came in through the front door after Dad unlocked it. She stepped over the threshold slowly. Her eyes moved to the brass lock, then the camera, then the framed photo near the hallway wall. It showed all 4 of us at the lake when I was 16 and Brielle was 13. I was holding a fishing pole. Brielle was rolling her eyes. Mom was laughing behind us. For a second, Brielle looked almost small. Then she saw the folder. Her shoulders went rigid. Dad pointed to the chair across from him. "Sit down." She sat. I stayed beside Caleb near the wall. Mom stood near the counter with both hands wrapped around a mug she had not touched. No one offered Brielle coffee. No one told her it was okay. She looked at me first. "So you sent everything to the lawyer?" "Yes." "You made me look insane." "No," I said. "I showed him what happened." Her eyes flashed. "You always have to win." I held her gaze. "No. I just stopped agreeing to lose." That silenced her. Dad opened the folder and slid the printed email toward her. Brielle stared at it without touching it. Then he placed the audio transcript beside it. "You knew," he said. Brielle's jaw tightened. "You knew Naomi paid for this house," Dad continued. "You knew you had no claim, and you still told people she stole it." I was upset. "You were lying." I felt abandoned. "You abandoned your sister first." The words landed hard. Brielle looked at Mom, searching for rescue. Mom did not move. "I made a mistake," Brielle said. "No," I replied. "You made a choice. Then you made another choice. Then another. You took money meant for your niece. You left for Vegas. You came back demanding a house you said you did not care about. And when I said no, you tried to turn everyone against me." Tears filled her eyes. This time I could not tell whether they were real. Maybe they were. Maybe she finally understood that consequences were not the same thing as cruelty. I said I would pay you back, she whispered. I looked down at my hands. You can, I said. But paying back money is not the same as repairing trust. Her face crumpled slightly. I went on before anyone could interrupt. You will repay the $4,000 in monthly payments. You will send it directly to the account Caleb and I opened for the baby. You will not stay in this house. You will not ask mom or dad for money. You will not use my name in conversations with relatives unless you tell the truth. Brielle shook her head slowly. And if I don't agree? Then you don't have access to us. She looked at Dad. He nodded once. Mom began to cry, but she did not argue. That was the part Brielle could not understand. She had always believed love meant someone would eventually surrender. She had been raised inside too many soft landings, too many excuses, too many people saying times don't make this worse. But sometimes refusing to make it worse means refusing to make it easier. Brielle signed the repayment agreement that night. It was not dramatic. There were no slam doors, no police cars, no family gathering to watch her fall apart. Just a pen, a document, and a sister who finally had to write her name beneath the consequences she had spent years avoiding. When she finished, she placed the pen down carefully. Then, she looked at me. I don't know how to fix this, she said. I believed that part. For the first time, she sounded less angry than afraid. I took a breath. You start by not asking me to fix it for you. She nodded once. Then she left. The front door closed behind her with a quiet click. Weeks passed. Brielle made the first payment exactly on time. Then the second. She did not call Mom crying. She did not ask Dad to cover it. She did not post vague messages online about toxic families or betrayal. Maybe she was embarrassed. Maybe she was finally learning how life felt without someone rushing in to absorb the cost of her decisions. I did not know. And eventually, I stopped needing to know. Our daughter was born in October. We named her Eliana. The first night we brought her home, Caleb carried her through our apartment doorway in her car seat, moving carefully as if the whole world had become fragile. I stood behind him with one hand on the doorframe, exhausted and overwhelmed and happier than I had ever been. The crib stood ready in our room. The stroller waited near the closet. The car seat Brielle's money had helped replace was secured in the back of our old car. Nothing about it looked glamorous. Everything about it was ours. A month later, I drove to my parents' house with Eliana asleep against my chest. Mom met me on the porch. Dad stood beside her, stronger than he had been in months, holding the front door open. The brass lock caught the afternoon light. For years, that door had meant obligation to me. It had meant being called only when someone needed something. It had meant walking into rooms where I had to earn kindness by being useful. But that day, it meant something else. It meant choice. I handed Mom the baby and stepped back as she cried quietly into Eliana's soft hair. Dad smiled at his granddaughter with a tenderness that made his whole face change. Then I looked down at the keyring in my hand. The house was still there. The blue door was still there. The family was still complicated. But I was no longer standing outside of my own life waiting for someone to decide I belonged. Brielle had thought taking my baby shower fund would prove that I would always be the sister who gave in. Instead, it taught me the difference between love and access. Love can be patient. Love can be hurt. Love can even leave the door unlocked for the people who respect it. But access is not a birthright. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is change the lock, keep the key, and finally choose who gets to come home.